So this right here has got to be one of the coolest pieces of marketing material I've seen in a very long time, in that Bethesda has sponsored Adam Savage to build a real life Starfield starship. I say real life, it's not actually a working, go to space type thing, but they are using a combination of 3D printers and a whole bunch of other stuff to build one of the ships, or the ship that we see in a lot of the promotional material for Starfield. And if you haven't ever watched Adam's channel that he's got over here on YouTube, let me go ahead and minimize this for a minute so we can see everything. It's called Adam Savage's Tested. My head's over the top of it, guys. So somewhere in here, there'll be links down below if you want to take a look at this. But the most important thing is his channel is really cool because he does a lot of like model building and things on this channel. So if you like miniatures and you like the nuts and bolts of how things are put together, I highly recommend watching this because these are long episodes. Like this one right here, this is the first one, is an hour long, and they just put out another one. Let me go back here. Want to say, yeah. So they've got a whole series here. We've got this one, which was 7 days ago. That's that one, and then they just pushed this one up, which is there's two actually. We've got Bringing Starfield to Life right here, and then we've got a third one, which is The Great Bluing Flood of 2023. So like this is the one that just came out today,
At
and
the
and I'm
interior.
I'm purposefully not playing footage from these because I don't accidentally want to get dinged for copyright stuff. So we're just showing still footage from these so that you can. Because also you really need to go watch these. So like this one's a 40-minute video, but this whole series, like I said, if you like the nuts and bolts, this is them going into all of the. By the way, I love this cast iron skillet that's just like hanging up in the background there. There's just a cast iron. It's so awesome. But let's go back and take a look at that original video, which
It's that laying in
is
bed at night and like, how's
here.
that
Hang on. This one
gonna?
from seven
Ooh,
days ago.
yeah.
Large, big screen. Um, so they start off, and we see that they get a piece of concept art, and they then take that piece of art, and they then, I'm gonna try to get just at the right frame here so that we can see this here. So they have the piece of art that they have first and foremost, and then once they have that piece of art, it gets broken down into a 3D print model, which they then are breaking down into all of the various components to build out all the different things. But there's so much that's going into this beyond just the body of this. Because if you've ever if you never watched Mythbusters, him and Jamie have both had backgrounds in like miniatures and model making for like ILM and worked on Star Wars and stuff. And so they've got practical effects backgrounds. And so Adam Savage has taken that and done a lot of cool things since then. I really like the Tested series more than I liked Mythbusters. Like Mythbusters was cool, but this style of videos has been more for me because if you've this is especially for those of you who are channel members. I do a lot of behind the scenes videos for my members talking about my fascination with filmmaking, screenwriting, miniature making, stop motion photography, puppetry, all the things that have been done to make really cool cinematic experiences since like the original Star Wars, and then looking at Indiana Jones, Dark Crystal stuff, all the Jim Henson workshop stuff. Like what they did with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movies in the 90s was absolutely out of this world. And of course, more modern stuff, looking at like the Dark Crystal, Age of Resistance, and the more recent Pinocchio by Guillermo del Toro, which was a stop motion film. I'm fascinated by this type of stuff. And while this doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the game per se, I think this is a really cool example of how people can take inspiration from lots of different sources and create really cool things that are tied to whatever it is that they love. And I think we see a lot of this in cosplay in the modern era, where people take their favorite characters from films and video games and comics and so on and so forth and books and take them and create them, and they do some really interesting things with costuming. And obviously, in this case, Adam's got, a huge budget I would argue an infinite budget compared to someone like me might have. But breaking this down and looking at all the individual components they're building and how this all comes together. I mean, like they're talking about engine flow and how do these look and how are we going to make this part look and so on and so forth. Um, it's really, really phenomenal. And then we can get into like the 3D printing stuff here, which by the way, I would love to get into 3D printing, but I haven't yet because look at that. Just, just like my brother and I have had a lot of discussions about 3D printing and model making, but it's one of those things where it would be a fun hobby, but neither of us has the time to do right now. So I get to live vicariously watching videos like this because it is a chance to see a master at work. Because then they take all of these things and you put them together and you get stuff like this. And I also love how when you have an infinite amount of money and you have a machine shop where you can literally build anything you want to build. I think this is where you can get some really cool stuff. And also, like, hang on, yeah, it's this shot right here. If I can look at all of the parts laid out here, everybody. Like, if anybody has ever watched the engineering that goes into creating the massive Lego builds and dissecting these 1,000 part things, right? This is the level of, in my mind, genius that goes on when you're getting into model making like this. There was I think it's been probably 2 years ago, maybe more. It was way before I was doing big stuff with my channel. I think it was back when I only had like 700 followers or something. Um, I did a video on, I think it was something along the lines of the art of practical effects or something like that. And there was a really cool discussion that Frank Oz, who did Yoda, but also Miss Piggy and all this other stuff over the years with Jim Henson. But specifically, he was talking about how good green screen, good digital VFX only look good if they are balanced against practical effects and real sets, because the eye can tell when something isn't grounded in reality. And he talked about how he did confront George Lucas a little bit about the use of a digital Yoda. And eventually, as we saw throughout the prequel trilogy, they went back to a practical Yoda at some point, but they blended it together with more CGI stuff. Um, but the reason I say all that is because in that documentary, I remember there's a specific moment in not that discussion, but in the video is what I'm talking about. I went back to one of the documentaries they did about the making of Star Wars, and there's a scene where you've got those cargo ships that are leaving Hoth during the invasion of the AT-ATs, the AT-ATs, whatever you want to call them, when the Empire is invading and they're escaping and they're trying to get out, and they shoot the ion cannon out, right? And the blast goes past that ship that's sailing off into the Nether trying to escape. That ship has underneath it a ton of cargo containers. And it's really funny because growing up, I never noticed or realized that that was a cargo ship. I always thought, I just was like, it's a ship. It looked cool, it was flying off into space. The mind was all about, in my mind, it was all about they're trying to get away. Here's this shot. They shoot the ion cannon, it hits the Star Destroyer, and it sends it reeling off, and the ship gets away and goes into light, and it goes into hyperspace. But in that documentary, they showed how that vessel was a cargo container ship. It was essentially a giant space tanker. And underneath it were all of these cargo containers that were attached to the bottom of the ship. And the painstaking amount of hand painted detail that went into that, including all the lights and everything else they did to make it look realistic in that shot as it was shot against blue screen going into space. That's the kind of stuff that fascinates me because we don't see a lot of that practical filmmaking, that practical miniature work anymore, because a lot of times in especially in the age we live in, it's cheaper to produce things digitally, and you don't need someone who has a machine shop like this with all of these skills. All you need is someone who knows how to create a 3D model, and that's a lot easier to find than it is to find a crew of people who are just working on practical effects. Which is why anytime I see a film that uses or relies heavily upon practical effects, I am always going to prefer the visuals in those films than I am in something purely digital because it just looks better. The eye knows. So anyway, I'm rambling. You need to watch this series if you haven't already. I'm going to drop a link to the playlist below. It's over on Adam Savage's Tested channel. Highly recommend it. It is a sponsored series, so know that in advance. Bethesda is absolutely paying him to do this, and it's a whole series of documentary videos that's coming out. It's so cool. Check it out. If you want to see me play Starfield, like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon because we will be starting. I've got Head Start access with the premium edition on my Xbox Series X. So I'll be starting, I believe, the night of the 31st, unless something happens. And there's storms going on right now with hurricanes. You never know if the power is going to go out. But daily streams at 11 a.m. here on the channel. Don't forget to check the Discord. Links are down below. I'll see everybody in the next one. Until then, stay safe and happy gaming.